I'm here with Stephanie today. Stephanie is donor conceived by egg donation. And I'm so happy that we get to have this conversation because I think this is the very first time where I'm talking to someone who has been conceived by egg donation ever in my life. I don't think I've ever talked to someone from egg donation before. Thank you so much for taking the time, Stephanie.
No, thank you, Daniel.
If you could start off by telling a bit about your story in your own words. I saw an article from you, but most viewers and listeners will not have seen that article when they watch or listen to this little podcast here. Could you tell me kind of, if you had to break it down in a few sentences, what was your story like being donor conceived?
Yeah. So I knew from a very early age that I was donor conceived. And when I was little, like people would be like, oh, like Grace, like my mom's Grace. So like the person who gave, not the donor mom, but my birth mom, my birth mom was like, like she's like, oh, this is my child Stephanie, and people were like, oh, you really look like your kid really looks like you, and we'd all laugh because that's not actually like, that's not actually possible. So I knew from a very young age that was a thing. I think it was not until 2006, 2007 when I got interviewed by the Seattle Times when I was 12 years old, that I really put the two and two together, that my mom got an egg from somebody else, and then the sperm was my dad, and they did in vitro fertilization, and then had me. It was not an easy road. I don't know if this is in scope for this question, but it really was not easy for my mom at all. My mom tried, obviously natural birth. She even considered donating from China. So donating, or not donate, oh my God, from adopting a kid from China to bring over here to the States. But ultimately, I think she really wanted to carry her herself and was not able to because she was 47 years old at that time. So through 10 rounds of IVF, she was finally able to have me. So here I am.
Oh, wow, 10 rounds.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a long journey, 10
Yes.
rounds.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So your mother, she was in her late 30s, early 40s. What was the situation?
Yes, she was 47 when she had me. She had 10 rounds of IVF before she had me, and previous to
those
that,
were all with donor eggs. All the 10 rounds were with donor eggs.
That's a really good question. I want to say, oh God, that's actually a really good question. I don't know if all 10 rounds were with donor eggs. I would assume that that some of them were hers and some of them were other people's. And she before that, she actually had a tubular pregnancy that led her to internally bleed, and then she had a miscarriage because of that. And I think that was in the 80s or so, and then she had me in 95.
Okay, so you are about 30 years old now.
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm going to be 31 in 1 week exactly.
Yeah, you have one of the years where it's very easy to calculate how old you were at what year. Same for me. Yep. I was born in the year 2000, so.
Oh, that is very easy. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that's that must have been a big kind of financial load on your family as well. My mother, she was struggling with infertility in her mid-30s. I think it's a little bit because of the lifestyle in the 2000s, because she's a professor in psychology, so she was probably not living kind of the most fertility-oriented lifestyle as many academics do. Yeah. And she spent all the money to have my brother and me. Was that something that affected you growing up as well? Was that like a discussion or a thing that your parents said, you were such an expensive child, behave?
No, actually, that's a very good, I mean, that it makes sense, but no, I think everything, they never really put the finances on me. Surprisingly enough, 10 rounds of IVF, that's really not financially, I don't even know how they did that, to be honest. But I grew up decently well off. I would say upper middle class in Bellevue, Washington, which is, known for high income families. And so finances was really, I'll just admit, like I was very privileged to not have that be an issue for me. I got everything what I wanted. I didn't have to go through any financial struggles or anything. So I'm very privileged to say that we weren't affected by the 2008 financial crisis. We were very, my parents and I were pretty insulated from that because I think my dad had a really good job. He was a insurance partner at New York Life when he retired. So finances were honestly pretty damn good, and that's why I myself want to set out a very financially stable future, for myself. We're very fiscally conservative. We try to we save a lot, and we invest that money. So I think the generational wealth we want to for my future kids. I'm not pregnant right now, but for my future kids, I would also want to pass on the generational wealth.
Do you have family plans yourself, as in, certain steps that you're taking there? Because I can imagine that, me growing up with a mother who delayed motherhood into her mid to late 30s and seeing the struggles that come out of it, I could imagine you in your situation, seeing how lucky you were that you were born, right? In a way, for you to maybe, like, do you have more pressure on yourself and a certain timeline that you set yourself? Because I do run into a lot of people who, might end up without a child, from kind of the sense that I get in the conversation, where I say, okay, like, this person is in her early 40s and she's not really taking it seriously. Like, she's not, going all in. How is that for you? Did your mother's experience affect you at all there?
Yeah, absolutely. There are actually two ladies in the office right now who just had kids. One is 41 and the other is like 35, but she's very unhealthy. And they did not, this was a oopsie baby. So hey, we're not in the right, they did not. So I'm seeing all like the complications that they have, and it reminds me of myself. And yes, I will say that I would want to have kids before 35 because of that reason. I do have one frozen egg, and I did freeze one of my eggs through one of my employers, which I'm also very privileged for. I unfortunately did not get as great of a freezing result as I wanted. As most people already know, that one frozen egg is absolutely dismal result, because one frozen egg means that you have only 11% chance of resulting in a live birth. So effectively, you'd want to have 12 or more eggs in order for you to actually make that baby happen. The reason why I did not do a second round of IVF or a second round of egg freezing is because I already was engaged to my current husband, and the fertility clinic said, well, you're a really good candidate. You're going to get married and probably have kids within the next, before you're 35. So it should not be an issue. So I did not do a second round of freezing. I just left it at one, and just I think my take on it is that we will try naturally. And if it happens, or if it doesn't happen, then that's when we would use the frozen egg. And then if the frozen egg doesn't work, then we'll assess other options, maybe not have a kid, maybe adopt. Then I think that's when we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, what I see a lot is that intentional motherhood is a big hurdle for many women nowadays. That it is also, if you look at it, very modern. It's not something natural in that sense, right? The fact that you make this choice intentionally and yourself. Has your mother ever explained why she decided to delay motherhood into her 40s? So
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. If I'm going to make a really big assumption, I would say that she was probably traumatized by the miscarriage that she had in the 80s, which rightfully so. I think a tubular pregnancy, and almost bleeding. She almost bled to death. She was very, very close to death. She had to have blood transfusions. So that's my assumption, but she didn't tell me what the actual reason was as to why she waited so long to have me.
Okay, that is a very strong kind of argument to make, why you would delay your family, or something like that happened. That I would definitely understand. For my mother, she was hoping to find the right partner, but she was very focused on her career, and then eventually she had a certain age where the sexual marketplace would not really offer the kind of men that she was looking for or hoping to find. And as a professor of psychology, she couldn't take any men seriously anymore. She she you know, she felt like she could do better herself, and I think she did well. Did you ever feel like growing up you wish you had, because as far as I know your donor was and stayed anonymous to this day, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever done a genetic testing or DNA testing?
Of course. Yeah, we've done so. My understanding is that there actually wasn't such thing, and I could be wrong about this, but I think back in '95 there wasn't such thing as whether you could be open or not. Like my understanding, based on the fertility clinic that we went through, or that my mom went through, is that because of HIPAA, they are not allowed to disclose who the donor is. So that's maybe I have honestly haven't done my research, but that's how that's what we knew. And growing up, it's like my mom was like, well, when you turn 18, then that's when we can go to the her name's Gretchen, at the fertility clinic, and see if there's anything that you can do to find out more about this person. So we actually met once I turned 18. Then that's when I was legal. I turned of legal age and can find. I met Gretchen, the fertility clinic person, and she told me that unfortunately we cannot disclose anything. There are DNA tests out there. There is like a donor bank out there, but those are all opt-in models. It's not like, so the chances are you finding something is very low. But she did refer me to another person who was also conceived via egg donation. I did reach out to her in around 2013, 2014, met her up in person. And she said that at that time that she also has not found her donor mom, and that she was working with a lawyer to have that happen. But as of late, I actually just texted her because of this podcast. I texted her today, but she hasn't responded. I assume that she still has not seen, has never met her donor mom and doesn't know any details. For me, in order for me to learn more about myself, I did a DNA test. I did 23andMe, and then I also did WeGene, which is it's a Chinese DNA test. They both showed very like normal results. Like, okay, I'm 100% Chinese. Okay, good. that's kind of about it. There wasn't anything like else that I could really glean from. So basically, I'm not too sad about that, because it's like if you grow up being told that you can't find your donor mom and you won't be able to find your donor mom, and that you just have to accept it, I think it's like you just kind of live life as normal. It's kind of like we all know, like all humans know that we're going to die someday. And you just kind of have to accept that. That's kind of part of life. And so that's how I have seen this. Now, would I be absolutely ecstatic to find my donor mom? Absolutely. I think I would love to meet her. I would love to know who she is. If I can get her genetic information, health information, what she looks like, I think that'd be really great. If there's anything more that comes out of it, then awesome. But I think just those really basic things would like at least help me a lot as to like, who do I actually truly look like? People still say, even after they know that my birth mom is not my biological mom, they even still say that I look like my mom. So do I look like my dad? Do I look like this other person? Stuff like that. I think that would be great to know. The article in the Seattle Times also, when I was 12, I talked about nature versus nurture. I would like to know if my personality is truly from my dad, or is it from this other person? We don't know who this person is. So maybe there's a lot of like traits and a lot of like stuff that comes from her that we don't know of right now.
Yes, it's what I felt too when I was a teenager and I didn't know who my donor was. I found out when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
Who my donor father was.
Well,
but I never really, it never bothered me too much, just as you. Like, I was just curious at most, right? I was not traumatized or like, you know, in pain or thinking about it daily. I was not thinking about it at all, really, except when people would like ask questions and talk to me about it. And what I found is that openness is really just nice to have, but not like, for most donor conceived people I've met, it's not like incredibly important. Those that have like traumatic and bad experiences is when they find out their donor was unethical, or only interested in the money and not interested in any contact at all. That can be sometimes like heartbreaking for the donor conceived children when they reach out and the donor says, I don't want to talk to you. And they sometimes turn very like loud in the industry. And I'm laughing because they attack donors like myself and saying you shouldn't be donating, but then are a result of a donation. So it's a bit of a
hypocrisy
of a situation. Yeah, it's a bit of a hypocrisy. But every donation situation is so different, right? Like you could have had a situation where your mother deeply loves you, your birth mom, or you could have had a situation where a birth mom kind of questions you as her child. There's so many factors involved in how this works out. Do you ever feel like there are traits that you cannot find in neither your mother or your father that you have, and that aren't out of nurture or your environment?
Yeah, that's really hard to say, right? Like, if you don't know who this other person is, then it's like, well, then the only thing that you can blame it on is nurture. So it's really hard to pinpoint what traits I like that I got from nurture versus this other person. So that's a very hard question to ask. I would like to know myself. I don't have this. Yeah, I don't.
And you've also haven't found any half siblings through 23andMe or
Nope.
Instagram,
No.
anything like that. And you don't have information if there were more donations done, or if
no, I don't. No, I mean, it would be nice. It'd be nice to see if there's any half siblings. That'd be cool. We actually joked because like we know that the donor is Taiwanese, and she was 24 at the time. And she obviously had to be. I mean, she's like a UW major, so she had to be my mom's size. Obviously, you cannot have like a 6-foot female for my mom, or else it's gonna like my mom's gonna die having me, because you want to have the donor be the same size as the female, so that you're not carrying a massive baby in your womb, right? So we know all of those traits, right? And what we can infer from those traits is that this Taiwanese person could be a little bit more rebellious, just because if you go back like 31 years ago, egg freezing is not really, and egg donation really is not a very popular thing, and it's not easy at all. Like if you talk about egg freezing right now versus 32 years ago, my mom, when she was doing IVF and trying to use her own eggs, her shots, that the hormones that she had to shoot were like 4 inches and were like hella thick, like the needles were hella thick. And it's kind of TMI, but like there's like so many spots on her butt that she can like inject the hormones, and like she ran out of surface area because it was just so like there's so much and it's so thick. Versus when I was going through my own egg freezing process, like the needles were like tiny. They're even thinner than the COVID needles. So the technology has significantly changed since then. A lot more popular now. Egg freezing is a lot more popular now. IVF clearly is a lot more popular now. Back then, not popular. It's only people who are really like into this, or they want like really, really need money in order for them to donate.
Okay, interesting. And have you ever, tried to optimize your lifestyle for fertility, knowing how exhausting such a journey later in life could be? Or is it more that financial stability was always a really important kind of thing of you growing up and your experience, so that you prioritize that more? Because that's where I see the major kind of mismatch sometimes, where people prioritize the money or the financial security out of an idea of scarcity that sometimes is not even real, while neglecting their health, which then later turns into scarcity for their family growth. Is that something that maybe after the egg retrieval you started doing or looking out for more?
The egg retrieval truthfully was not because of me. It was because of the amount of hormones that were shot. They identified early on that I had mild PCOS, so they didn't want to inject me with too many hormones. And so they underdosed me, then tried to take the more conservative route because they did not want me to be uncomfortable. If I overproduce eggs, then I'm going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be a very terrible process. So they underdosed me, and then they realized, oh shit, like we need to actually catch up. And they tried to, try to catch up by having a lot of hormones in me, and then by then it was already too late. So that's why we only had one egg retrieval. In terms of just health, I honestly, I didn't think of like health and fertility together, even though I do know that's a thing. But just overall, my parents are very old. Clearly, they had me at 47 and 52. My dad was 52. So I've seen a lot of death in my family, like just naturally, right? Because if you have old parents, you're gonna have old relatives, and old relatives, you're gonna see death at a pretty early age. My parents always talk about high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all these things, because like they are naturally like an older generation. So that has always been ingrained in me. And so therefore I have been, in my entire life has been very much centered around eating the right foods, making sure that you're healthy and whatnot, not because of fertility, but just because of overall longevity. And then along with that, financial stability. I am so sorry about these lights. I don't know what's going on right now. In terms of financial stability, because I grew up very financially stable, I wanted that for the rest of my life, with or without kids. Now with kids, we do have a baby fund. We did do research as to how much childcare is, how much it's going to actually result, like how much it takes to pop a baby out, how much a doula costs, how much the like in China, you have, in a lot of Asian countries too, the mom sits in a healthcare center for about a month, where they get like doted on, they get like really pampered, and like how much that would cost if I do that. So we've done all that, we've budgeted for that, and we're like we have, ever since me and my husband got engaged, like that has been in the back of our minds.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, if that's just on a side note, but I'm very thankful for you taking the time. And my girlfriend, she does preconception optimization with my recipients. So if you ever want to have a free call with her and talk to her about some blind spots you might have, just let me know, because what we find is every recipient has blind spots that are really easy to solve, such as polyester clothing is one, Teflon pans,
Yes.
polyester bed sheets. Like there's what I find is like there's the unhealthy people, which usually don't want children, or not really the kind of people I want to work with, because I put myself into this kind of responsibility as an open donor. I want to help people have healthy kids. And then there's quite a big range of people who are healthy when it comes to nutrition and movement, as like the kind of things we were taught in school that are healthy. But what I find, or what all donors have found, since we do a lot of testing with our fertility parameters, and it's easier to test sperm quality than it is to test egg quality, just because it's easier to retrieve and you just have to basically count. And we found that everything that is modern day stuff, right? Everything that was not around 300 years ago, our body's never designed to work in that environment the same way it did for the past tens of thousands of years. So yeah, that's just on a side note. As a thank you for the call. I'd love to connect you if you ever want to.
I actually did. So on the sperm note, right, on the sperm analysis note, I actually did. My husband did do a sperm analysis. We paid for that out of pocket, and they did say that his sperm are swimming well. So so that's good. And I know that even though there's a heavy emphasis on the women, there's actually a lot of evidence saying that men do play a factor into the fertility as well. Like the woman's egg can be very strong, but like if the sperm aren't swimming, they're not, like if the guy is unhealthy, then you're gonna have unhealthy sperm, and it's not gonna be. So I think that unfortunately, I think the male infertility is actually neglected a lot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I think the numbers across the board are the same. It's not like one gender is overall unhealthier, but the importance is 50-50 really. It's really I I tell my recipients how important it is to choose a healthy donor more than anything, especially if you choose a man for genetics and not for, provision or romance or anything like that. You choose
Yeah.
him purely on genetics. So that's the one point where you should choose the best and healthiest person you can find. Of course, it's also great if he's like kind and if he's responsible and transparent and things like that. But most importantly, health, because placenta is made up 50% by the man's DNA, and then a lot of things. People when they look at fertility, they also often think in like fertile and infertile. But it's not black and white. There's a big kind of there are a lot of facets in between where you can be fertile, but you have messed up epigenomes because your lifestyle is just fucked up. It's just not healthy. It's and that passes on to the kids as well. So one example are microplastics that can be affecting the DNA and can pass on all the way to grandchildren as well. So it kind of goes through the genome sequence and the genes turn on and turn off. So it's really a very interesting topic, and I've found that optimizing for fertility, to me at least in my personal belief, is the kind of way to grow a family. And I try to share that with my recipients because family has been treated like a side project for many people for a long time, where it's like, all these things are important, and then also I'm going to have some kids. But now people are starting to realize it's not that easy to just have some kids, because our environment has changed so much. But that's a bit of a different topic. I want to get back to your story. If you were able to give someone advice who's working with an egg donor, who's choosing an egg donor right now, what kind of advice would you give that person?
If somebody's trying to choose an egg donor, I mean, I think first of all, like having the option to have an egg donor who's open would be tremendous, because now that once you have your kid, if the kid is conceived well, then that kid can, and you can meet the donor and can like understand who she is, what she's like, stuff like that. And I think that would be tremendously helpful. As you said, probably when you're looking for an egg donor, you want something that's, if you want your own race kids, then clearly you'd want to find someone who is your own race, your own size. If the person who's carrying the egg needs, or carrying the baby, you want to find an egg donor who is your size. I think that's a very fair, like very it's a little bit common sense.
Yeah, it's not eugenic to say that.
Yeah. And then what else? Yeah, obviously you want somebody who's healthy, right? You want to go through their health records and see if they're healthy, and what problems, if they have any like known health complications. You'd want to know that and see and assess whether you want to accept those known health those health complications, or you don't want to have that, and that's when you start your search again.
Have you yourself in your 20s ever considered becoming an egg donor?
No. I know that sounds very it sounds very cold and very hypocritical. But I think because my mom has always told me you have very limited eggs. Everybody has limited eggs. And like obviously she went through her own fertility issues herself, so she's like pretty worried about me, even though I'm not genetically hers. So therefore I didn't exactly want to donate my eggs either.
Yeah, that I understand a lot. My girlfriend was considering it, but I personally also think that you should grow your family first, and have your own children. I think egg donation is great for women who have a few children young and then don't want any more, or for women who are very healthy but can't raise children themselves financially. I always think it's great when, some people don't like when money is transferred and a life is born, but looking at you and looking at me, we are a result of money being transferred at the end of the day too. And it's amazing to see how money can result in a life being born to me. So I'm a big supporter of any kind of life that is born, healthy life that is born out of sperm donation, egg donation, or surrogacy, anything like that.
Yeah.
If you could take a step back or go back in time, and talk to your mother maybe in her like early 30s, or her 20s or something like that, and then again when she's choosing the egg donor, would there be anything that you would want to share with her or tell her prior to making that choice?
Honestly, no. Actually, the only thing that I would like is just to have an open donor. If
Right.
there was an option. I actually don't know if the regulations or like, legal stuff allowed that to happen at that time. But if there was an option, I would have loved it. And again, you cannot like I cannot blame my mom because like my mom was very desperate and like at that time you probably couldn't find many Chinese eggs. So to even find a Chinese egg, I would assume that's pretty hard. Um, so it's not like she really had the choice whether to like pick an open donor or not pick an open donor. But in a very ideal case, then of course I think she would want she herself would have even wanted an open donor for me and her kid,
Right.
or
Yeah,
me or herself and me.
right. Cool. Yeah, that's basically what I tried to do with the Open Donor Association, is that we try to and more on the sperm donor side, simply because there's a higher demand for sperm donors. A lot comes from like same-sex couples or single mothers by choice. They usually are not looking for egg donors. But I've also had some messages from egg donors the last few days who were asking me if I, can also refer them. So I'm hoping to find an agency for them. But I would definitely only do open donation. I don't think that it's inherently bad that people were born through anonymous donation. But I just think that the situations where donor conceived children really had problems, they resulted also because the donors did not carry any responsibility, or were able to stay kind of quiet and anonymous, and then maybe go to multiple sperm banks, or sometimes fertility doctors would give their own sperm to recipients instead of the donor sperm. So openness is just much harder to kind of make major mistakes in reproduction, because you're seeing the person you're reproducing with and you're saying yes. But I think back in the days, doctors even told their recipients to pretend like the child is their own, because they thought psychologically that's better for the child in the future. I don't think they were thinking anything bad. And then later, the donor conceived people who found out very late, and that's another category of kind of traumatized DCP, is when they find out too late and they go in their 30s and 40s through this situation that they and probably you could have been the same if your mother had not been open to you. You would just believe that she's your bio mom, right? But she was always honest.
Right. And I do stand by that. I do think my mom did a great job, a phenomenal job of being transparent from the jump. And she was very, very secure in the sense that, like, if I do end up finding that mom and I have a better relationship with that mom than her, then so be it. Then that's okay too. And I think having that security and having that transparency was pivotal to my relationship with my birth mom. Because, like, as you said, I do know some people who, not donor specific, but like people who are my age who found out about something about their parents super late, like in their 30s. Something big happened with their parents that they did not know about, and it's like, and then you try, and then basically you've like that person just kind of second guessed their entire relationship with their parents because they found out something about their parents so late in life.
Right. Was there ever a situation that you wished you had siblings at home, because you're a single child, right?
Of course. Yeah. I'm an only child. Of course, I wish I had siblings at home. I think growing up, I was pretty socially inept. But I think I've kind of made up for that now. But I think that having siblings in the house would have definitely made me a little bit more socially adept. I probably would have been a little bit less lonely. I think my parents would have doted on me less for a good reason. And I think I would have less only child syndromes. I I think only child syndrome is a very big category already. So I think I'll just leave it at that. Obviously my parents were very old, and like to have me was already huge. So siblings were very much not in in was not even a consideration. Actually, I do want to say my mom did think about surrogacy. So my mom, one of my dad's family friends, actually offered to be my mom's surrogate. But my mom felt very bad that it's like you have, this kid, this person who I know is carrying my kid for 9 months, and then like I just take it almost feels for her, it felt like stealing. And it's not like that's just her. It's not like she doesn't support surrogate. She's totally fine with, surrogacy in general. But like for her, it just felt very like sad that like somebody else did all the work for you and all you have to do is take. So she did consider that, but then decided against it. And then the second thing is that the reason why she did not do surrogacy is because she cannot control what the surrogate does, even though like you can be very close to the surrogate and tell her what to eat and tell her to diet and exercise and whatnot. Like ultimately she can do whatever she wants, and you just have to deal with the results. Versus my mom was able to control her diet, eat the right things, do the right things in order to make sure, or to increase the chances of me being a successful baby.
Okay. Have you ever had anyone online or in person or whatever criticizing the way you were created, saying that it's unethical or unnatural or anything like that?
Yeah, so I would say that's more, so I have a few Christian friends, and there was one time that one of my good Christian friends, I just told him off the cuff that I was from a donated egg. He was like, "What?" Like in kind of in a bad tone. And after that, we didn't really talk about it, but like we stayed really good friends. That actually did not impact my relationship with him. But then I asked my other best friend, who is a pretty devout Christian, and I asked her like, and she didn't really respond. Like she was like, "Oh, like Stephanie, how come you didn't tell me earlier?" Because I told them when I was like 18 or so. And she's like, "Oh, Stephanie, like why didn't you tell me this earlier?" And I'm like, honestly, there isn't like a really like, it's a little bit unnatural to just say like, "Hey, like by the way, this is a fun fact about me," right? It's not like, it doesn't really come up naturally in conversation. And then especially when you're young, right? It doesn't really come up naturally in conversation. And then it's not super relevant because it's more like a fun fact. It's not like it changes who I am, or it doesn't change like anything about me. So I did, yeah. Anyway, so one of my best friends, who like is a pretty devout Christian, did explain to me why one of my best guy friends reacted the way that he did, is because at least from her perspective, according to the Bible, that you're not really supposed to mess with God. And so messing with God in this sense means that going the very unnatural process of going through IVF and egg donation and all these very scientific methods in order to have a kid. So that's the only thing. So like from her perspective, if let's say she's infertile or something, she doesn't have let's say she has fertility issues, she would not be going through IVF or egg donation or sperm donation or what is the other? She would not be going through unnatural ways to be having a kid.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. When people argue with me that are Christian, and I get a lot of it, of course, just
Yeah.
like that what I do is weird, and it shouldn't be the case. I think most people think donors are weird or think it's something sinister to do. But I like to remind Christians of the first thing God told Adam and Eve, which was to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I would say, as an agnostic myself, like it's was raised in a culturally Christian household, and like a lot of my best friends are Christian, so like I do know a lot about Christianity. But Yeah, I think there's in terms of the Bible, like my personal take is that there are a lot of conflicting answers. And I think like that's why a lot of denominations exist for a reason is that there's different interpretations of the Bible depending on who you
Right. Yeah, I think the more serious you take Genesis 1 and the things God said to Adam and Eve, the higher the chance that you will grow your family tree, which is also why, even though I was an agnostic for quite some time, I decided to, explore Edenic Christianity for myself more because I
are.
felt like having guiding principles in a day-to-day has helped me just, kind of do the work that is necessary and not think too much about, oh, what do I want from life? Like, what are the things, all the things I could do, all the places I could explore. Because I've done that for quite some time. I've, the traveling and the startup or whatever it was that I was interested in. And then I found, okay, I'll just work hard. I'll just maintain the garden. I'll just, multiply. And then, personally, I do feel very close to God with my work and close to like kind of Eden state. My environment feels a lot like Eden since I've been focusing on those things. But yeah, that's again besides the point. I sometimes go off and talk about
No, it's
random
totally
things.
fine. No, it's a great perspective,
Uh,
and it's really great that you're doing all this.
yeah, I appreciate that. It's great to hear support from other donor conceived people. It's great that you are one of those who had a great experience. You were not lied to by your parents. You didn't
Mhm.
have at least we don't. It seems like your egg donor was healthy, but you didn't have a bad egg donor who did something crazy or strange. And I definitely encourage you to look into the DNA testing every 5 to 10 years or so,
Okay, all
because
right.
what who knows what might show up. It might be that she had kids of her own, and they later in life decide to sign up for the DNA testing
Mhm.
as well. And if you have kids of your own, I would pass on. Um, whatever information you have, because maybe they will later find they have distant half cousins somewhere.
Yeah,
And
that would
that's
be
just
cool.
um,
That'd be
that's
awesome.
just nice to know. It's nice to know to have those connections, and it's great to hear that you see it um, that way too. Because in the industry, I fight a lot against people who had a bad experience and they cannot relate to me. And I had a great experience. My father turned an open donor when I was 15, and he made me basically a donor too. I kind of found pronatalism, which has like a negative connotation, but for me, pronatalism just means to um, prioritize reproduction and healthy reproduction, and he kind of got me there in doing that. So I have more kind of relaxed idea about it, and it's great to talk to someone else who had a great experience with a healthy donor and a mother who was open and transparent, Stephanie. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
and again, if you ever go on the journey yourself,
Mhm.
feel free to text me, and I'll see if I can connect you to some experts that know about the optimization process prior to conceiving for both you and your husband. I'm open to helping you there. Um, and I'd love to see, and maybe in a few years we can talk again and see how your family growth is for yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of stepping into the footsteps of your mother in a way.
Yeah.
So just like we all are. So thanks again. Thanks so much, Stephanie.